Pema Chodron she is a Buddhist nun. I'm not sure that a woman can be considered a Buddhist priest. Don't know that I get that, but in whatever case, that is what she's called, is a Buddhist nun. She is the author of over 20 books and has taught around the world about love and compassion. She sort of reminds me of a Thich Nhat Hanh kind of. Pema Chodron is a Buddhist nun. I'm not sure that a woman can be considered a Buddhist priest. Don't know that I get that, but in whatever case, that is what she's called, is a Buddhist nun. She is the author of over 20 books and has taught around the world about love and compassion. She sort of reminds me of a Thich Nhat Hanh kind of character. If you've ever experienced Thich Nhat Hanh, he's a Vietnamese Buddhist monk who is also just a wonderful soul. He is still with us. He's actually still alive, but his body has endured some terrible bout with cancer over the last few years. He happens to still be in the world with us, but both of them really kind of teach from the same place. At least it feels that way to me. I have a tendency when I come in contact with teachers that are very meaningful to me to feel it. There's a particular vibe and a frequency. And I kind of get that sort of, it's almost like, if you listen to 90s rock and you hear a 90s rock station, they all sound real similar. Well, that's kind of what I feel with like Pema and with Teak. But this book was my first introduction to Pema. And then after that, of course, I had to go looking for her everywhere. I was like, why have I not heard of her? And to me, I kind of summate this book from its I've read it a couple of times, and I suggest actually doing that, even with us doing this discussion, read it more than once, because there's a lot of really good stuff in here. And there's some stuff in here that you're just kind of like, what? I can't do that. And you may not be at the stage in your journey to be able to do some of these things. But even the title itself got me initially, Welcoming the Unwelcome. And I thought, who the hell wants to do that? What does that even mean, to welcome the unwelcome? Now, I immediately went philosophical with it. Well, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to welcome those folks who are unwelcome. That's really not the book is entirely about. It's about being open. It's about experiencing acceptance, I think. And I wrote just a quick line after reading this book the first time. I wrote it right in the front of my book there. And I just said, this book to me ultimately is about deep compassion and a simple reverence for all of life. That's kind of how I would sort of summate this book and what it did to me. So I thought we'd go ahead and get into chapter 1. I want to read a few things that I don't want to monopolize this at all. I just want to read a few things that stuck out to me in chapter 1, and then let's kind of discuss some of those things. And Obi, you've read this before. Patricia, I think you have a copy of this. You guys chime in to maybe something you've made notes on or something that was meaningful to you, and then anyone else obviously involved with the discussion. The opening part, the title of the chapter is Begin with a Broken Heart. Now, from a new thought standpoint, and if you come from a real sort of positivity standpoint, you kind of look at that and you say, what? I mean, isn't that kind of what we're running from? Like, why would we want to begin with a broken heart? But if you've ever experienced a broken heart, then you know what a broken heart will do to you. It will change your perspective on a lot of things. But the opening, just before the chapter starts, it says, our aim is to fully awaken our heart and mind, not just our own greater well-being, but also to bring benefit, solace, and wisdom to other living beings. What motivation could top that? What motivation could top that? Now, she opens up with saying, what is my purpose for reading this new book with its ominous title, Welcoming the Unwelcome? Are you reading it because times are uncertain and you want some clues about what will help you to make it through whatever's coming? Are you reading it to gain wisdom about yourself? Do you hope it will help you to get over certain emotional or mental patterns that undermine your well-being? Or did someone give it to you with lots of enthusiasm, and now you don't want to upset them by not reading it? Or were you invited to a book study with One Love Spirit Center? Right. So your motivation may include, she said, it may include some of all of the above. They're all good reasons, even the last one, for reading this or any book. But in the Mahayana Buddhist tradition, to which I belong, when studying spiritual teachings, we set out by arousing an even greater motivation. In other words, from their tradition, they come at pretty much everything with this motivation. It's known as bodhicitta. In Sanskrit, bodhi means awake. Chitta means heart or mind. Our aim is to fully awaken our hearts and minds, not just for our own greater well-being, but also to bring benefit and solace and wisdom to other living beings. What motivation could top that? So I'll let you know that she's saying this book is really about awakening within our own selves, our own heart and our own mind, and expanding, awakening to a deeper sense, to fully awaken our hearts and minds to the greater well-being and to bring benefit and wisdom to all living beings. So I'll go down to, and I'll skip a paragraph here because I don't want to read the whole chapter to you. The next thing I underlined was bodhicitta, the awakened heart, begins with the wish to be free from whatever gets in the way of our helping others. I love that. Bodhicitta, the awakened heart, begins with the wish to be free from whatever is getting in the way of helping others. When I think in terms of helping somebody else, for me personally, sometimes I'll start categorizing people or start categorizing situations. I know that you probably don't, but I do. And I look at those situations and I realize there's some judgment there. And so for me, when I'm thinking about awakening my heart and mind, I want to further expand and free myself from whatever keeps me from helping other people, whether it's a judgment, whatever political party they come from, whether they're overtly religious. I've said this to a lot of people before. Radical inclusion for me doesn't start stretching until I start dealing with like fundamentalist Christians, honestly. That's where I have my biggest issue. I mean, I'm telling the truth about it. I'm being very transparent with you. That my issue is not gay people. My issue is not people who go to the bars on the weekends and drink. It's not people who are unmarried, living together, and all these things I was taught were so terrible when I was growing up. I run into there's a part of me that's resistant to overtly religious people, fundamentalists. And I'm asking myself during this time, I'm just letting you guys know, as I'm being very transparent and honest with you, I'm asking myself to expand when it comes to that. What is it that I need to free myself from? What kind of resistance do I have that I need to free myself from so that both bodhicitta is moving throughout me freely to everyone? So this is going to be a challenge. Welcome the unwelcomed. All right, so a few more things I underlined. We commit to doing all it takes to free ourselves completely from all our varieties of confusion and unconscious habit and suffering, because these prevent us from being fully there for others. In the language of Buddhism, our ultimate commitment to it is to attain enlightenment. How many have heard that word before, enlightenment? We hear a lot of it now. It's actually becoming really popular. I've noticed that there's sort of like back in the early 1900s, you had Paramahansa Yogananda. You had moving into further into the 1900s, you had Jiddu Krishnamurti, you had Alan Watts, you had oh gosh, what's the other guy's name? It's slipping my mind at the moment. That the Beatles went and saw him all the time. Ramdas, Ramana Maharshi. There was a sort of a surgence in the Western world of Eastern thought, and it kind of culminated, it seemed, with the 60s, the hippie movement. It sort of culminated in that, and it also grew a little bit after that, but then it was kind of like squashed. It was like sort of like the late 70s and early 80s led into a surge of what was called the moral majority. Like there was a big Jesus movement, but during the hippie movement, but it kind of gave way to some real strange ideas and started moving toward a very strict, very religious environment. So I know we know what the word enlightenment, we think we know what the word enlightenment means. I used to think that was my ultimate search, was to search for enlightenment, right? And then I came to realize that the more you search for it, the more you push it away. The more you try to go after enlightenment, the more you seem to push it away. It really comes with a sense of acceptance. And as I accept, the more I embrace, the more I welcome, even the unwelcome, the more enlightenment just kind of happens. Like, for instance, spring, we've just come through the spring. The fruit shows up after the bud and the flower vanquishes of its own self. So that's, to me, what enlightenment does. It's the growing, it's the seed on the inside of us. It grows into a bud, into a flower, and then it disappears as the fruit arrives. We don't have to force that. It becomes a natural course. And that's kind of the way I see enlightenment. But it says, in the language of Buddhism, our ultimate commitment is to attain enlightenment. In essence, this means knowing fully we are who we really are. So that's what she kind of defines enlightenment as, knowing fully who we really are. When we are enlightened, we will be fully awake to our deepest nature, which is fundamentally open-hearted, open-minded, and available for others. We will know this to be true beyond any doubt, beyond any going back. In this state, we will possess the greatest possible wisdom and skill with which we can benefit others and help them to awaken completely themselves. All right, so I wanted to, real quick, because I really don't want to take a whole lot of this time, but she talks about begin with a broken heart. And but I wanted to slow down there and maybe see if there's a hand that goes up, or somebody who wants to speak to something that you've already heard so far that's of interest to you. Again, because I just don't want to monopolize the conversation. Anybody got your hand up? I can't really tell if there's hands up either. OB, did you have something I didn't know?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the idea of the broken heart, that is really the essence of all spiritual awakening, as I understand it.
Yeah.
Someone once said that we only see best when we're lying flat on our back. And also someone once said that we see best through eyes that have been flushed with tears. And so it's in the brokenness or the poverty of one's spirit that we begin to see clearly what is ahead of us. I know that's true for me. If it wasn't for the brokenness and the despair and the despondency of life, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so we use this as a catalyst to move forward and to experience greater spaces and places of this ultimate reality, what life is truly all about. So I truly believe that spiritual maturation begins with a broken spirit. I mean, it's true of my life.
Yeah, because I even think part of that is, waking up one day and going, oh man, wow, I'm not even living life as I truly am. Like I woke up one day and realized that I was just modeling what I had been told I was.
Sure.
And what a breaking heart moment. Like I was like, I don't know anything. I was like, holy crap, nothing's real. And when you have that moment, that's a broken heart moment too. Because I remember sitting in the middle of my bed in my apartment on Lake Sinclair, Georgia, and saying, I don't believe any of this shit. Those were my words. I don't believe any of this shit. That's what I said in that moment. And I remember I was like, I hope God doesn't strike me, because I'd always been taught that that's what God will do if you say those kinds of things. But I really had one of those oh crap moments. And that broke me so deeply. It affected my physical nature. Like people could tell something was not right. Luckily for me, at the time I was going through a divorce. So I could just say, well, my heart is broken. But my heart was broken because I didn't believe in anything. It wasn't even about the marriage falling apart. My marriage to my belief system mattered to me more than any other marriage. And that is when that was the biggest divorce I was going through.
Well, even Jesus, if you understand Jesus from an Easter perspective, setting aside the binary westernized interpretation of Jesus, but in one of his greatest teachings in the Sermon on the Mount, he says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for they will be comforted. So it's talking about this bankrupt of spirit, this letting go or relinquishing from these attachments and coming to this place and space of emptiness. It's in our emptiness that we see. It's looking beyond the eye, the physical eye, and it's hearing beyond the physical ears to that which is eternal and that which that draws all people to itself, herself, or himself. So it all begins in emptiness. It all begins with as she says, a broken heart.
Yeah,
it all begins there.
I agree. We talk a lot about emptiness, which I know that you've been involved with some of the conversations over the last few years, but I talk a lot about emptiness because I do believe, there's the old proverb that says the usefulness of a vessel lies only in its empty space. Can't use it without it being empty. The water bottle must be empty in order to fill it up. And so the same is true with that brokenheartedness. Now she shares a story, and I'll read this real quick. And this actually, she is a student of Trungpa Rinpoche, and yes. I don't say it as well as she does, but Trungpa Rinpoche shared this story when he was asked about practicing and cultivating a broken heart. This is on page 6 if you start to look at it, but it's a story that he shared that basically brought him into a place of seeing suffering and not turning away from it. So many times we turn away from suffering. Jesus, there's a story in the Gospels about that too, where the man that was robbed and beaten and left to die on the street, and many people turned away. But what he was called the Good Samaritan did not turn away. And so Rinpoche talks about not turning away from suffering, but he tells a story when he was a little boy. He said he was on a rooftop of a monastery and saw a group of young boys stoning a little puppy to death. And though they were quite far away, he could see the terrified eyes of the dog and hear the boys' laughter. They were doing it just for fun. Rinpoche wished he could do something to save the puppy, but he was helpless. For the rest of his life, all he had to do was recall that time, and a strong desire to alleviate suffering would arise in his heart. The memory of the dog gave him his desire to wake up a sense of urgency. This is what propelled him day after day to make the best use of his life. Most of us, one way or another, try to do good in the world. This is a natural result of our having basic goodness. But our positive motivations are often mixed with other factors. For example, some people try to be helpful because they feel bad about themselves. They hope to look good in the eyes of the world. Through their efforts, they hope to improve their standing with others, which may then raise their feeling of self-worth. Based on my long experience, and this is Pema speaking here, based on my long experience of living in communities, I can say that these people often accomplish an astonishing amount. You hear others saying, Maria is worth 6 people, or I wish everyone was like Jordan. In most ways, they are the ones you want to have on your team. But at the same time, they don't seem to get any closer to waking up. We all probably know someone who says things like, I give and I give and I give and I never get thanked. This kind of frustration is a sign that the underlying issues aren't being worked out. In other words, she's talking about they're giving, but they're giving from the motivation is not a motivation of compassion, really. Some people work hard day and night in the field of helping others, but their strongest motivation is to stay busy so they can avoid feeling their own pain. Wow. Some are driven by an idea of being, quote unquote, good instilled in them by their family or their culture. Some are motivated by feelings of obligation or guilt. Some do good to keep themselves out of trouble. Some are driven by the prospect of rewards in this life or maybe in a future existence. That sounds familiar if you come out of the Christian faith. Do good, get to heaven, you'll have jewels in your crown, and you can wear that really awesome crown in that Victorian village mansion that God's going to give you. Some are even motivated by resentment, anger, or a need to control others. If we take a good look within, we will probably discover that motivations like these are mixed with our genuine desire to help others. We shouldn't beat ourselves up about this because all these motivations come from our natural human tendency to look for happiness and to protect ourselves from pain. But they do not keep us from becoming more connected with our own hearts and with the hearts of other people. This makes it difficult for us to benefit others in any kind of a deep way. Wow. So the motivation is, bodhicitta, is to fully awaken the heart and the mind. And that little story about that puppy that Rinpoche shared. And I wish I could have done something about that. And every time he shared the story or needed to think about why am I relieving the suffering of others? That was motivation enough. And that's what opened up his heart. It broke his heart, which opened it up. You know, I mean, truly about broken hearts. I mean, we run away from broken hearts, but I've never eaten a scrambled egg without breaking the shell. And there's some kind of the shell that needs to be broken at times. There's something sometimes that needs to break so that that truth is coming out of us. Anybody had anything you wanted to share or something you heard in that?
Well, you've probably heard it before from me. I'm sure you have. It was the death of my daughter. And my heart was broken so badly. I was thinking about taking my own life at the time, just to relieve myself of the mental agony I was going through. And I felt like lost, completely lost. And all I could do was ask, it came to me to say, ask Divine Spirit, God, and, hey, all I want to get through is give me peace to get through this and nothing more than peace the rest of my life, nothing more. And I thought to myself, this is all mental conversation. I don't want anything more in life but peace. And if I should lose everything I have, just like Job in this, New Testament, that would mean nothing. I'd still have my peace. And within a few seconds, the agony gave way, and I wasn't overjoyed, but the agony was relieved. So that's what happened to me.
And ever since then, you've been in service of others.
Well, I've been generous all my life. I had some empathy, feeling for others, and compassion, and I had a general sense of the needy. I'd give to the needy when the occasion arose. I didn't go out and seek it, but just accidentally ran into it. I would give, but I never had a loving feeling, loving, caring, empathy, shall I say, for despots of the world. You know, Hitler and all the rest of them that killed millions. Until I got that peace, then I had a feeling of at least wondering why, and having a feeling sorry for them the way they turned out to be. So never had that feeling before in my life. It was just me and my family, and that's it. Get up, go to work, that's it.
I think brokenheartedness gives us, I think it gives us the opportunity to recognize our connection with everyone, because the reality is that everyone has had something break their heart at some point or another. I think it reminds us of how human we are and how okay it is to be human, and how to make that, that connectedness gives you the ability to, well, you mentioned Hitler, and so people automatically think about someone in their mind that in your mind you think in terms of being detestable. And when you think about that, I like what you said. You then felt this sense of looking past the actor, right, to the person. And I think that is the essence of bodhicitta. I really do. To be able to look past the actor and the action, and what is it that's motivating someone to act in this way, and have compassion for that one that we know we're connected to. I mean, it's Ram Dass said it like this. He said, when you become enlightenment, you are enlightened when you begin to see everyone as your lover.
Yes.
And essentially that was,
that's
to me,
friend.
when I heard him say, when you see everyone as your lover, a lot of people thought the same thing. What do you mean? What? It's not supposed to go around wanting to have sex with everybody. See, he said, no, that's not what I'm saying. He said, I want you to look a little deeper. And during a sharing one day, he was asked that question, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, when you have someone who you're in love with, you look past a lot of the flaws. You don't even see the flaws, in fact, because you love them so much. And you also, if you're trying to get commitment from them and you're in love with them, you have a tendency to bring out the best portion of you and relay that to them. And it became more understandable at that point. Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying. A deeper sense, getting past what we think of as judgments and flaws, and being able to see everyone as our lover.
The path of a bodhisattva in Mahayana